There is a silent danger that follows anyone who begins to see what others do not. A subtle tremor beneath the surface of ordinary life. A tension that forms when your eyes pierce through illusions that most people have spent their entire lives defending. Carl Jung understood this danger intimately. He once warned that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And those who dare to face theirs, those who dare to see, become outsiders in a world terrified of its own depths. So let me ask you this. What happens when you begin to perceive the shadows that others pretend are not there? What happens when the veil slips even for a moment, and you glimpse a truth that is too heavy, too bright, or too strange for the eyes of the collective? This video is not merely about psychological insight. It is about the cost of awakening. Imagine standing at the edge of a dense forest at night. Most people see only darkness, emptiness, maybe even danger. But a few, just a few, notice faint shapes moving between the trees, hear whispers that are not of the wind, sense pathways where others see only chaos. These are the ones Jung called the individuated, the rare individuals willing to confront the unconscious, to wrestle with the forgotten, the rejected, the hidden. But here lies the danger. When you see more than others, you threaten the world they are trying to preserve. People fear those who see too deeply. They mock them, isolate them, or accuse them of being strange, dramatic, even unstable. They do this not because the seer is wrong, but because the seer reflects the truth they cannot bear. In this journey, we will explore why Jung considered expanded perception both a gift and a burden. We will uncover the ancient origins of this archetype, the one who sees beyond the ordinary, and why history has always treated such individuals with suspicion. And most importantly, we will explore why awakening is not simply a path of enlightenment, but a path of confrontation, responsibility, and profound transformation. If you are watching this, chances are you've already begun to notice things others ignore, and that alone places you on a very old, very dangerous path, one that few have walked consciously, and even fewer have understood. Long before Jung gave language to the inner world, ancient civilizations already knew the peril of seeing too deeply. They spoke of seers, oracles, watchers, and wanderers of the unseen, figures who walked between realities, bearing truths that ordinary minds could not digest. From the priest philosophers of Egypt to the mystics of the Indus Valley, from the Delphic oracle to the desert prophets, these individuals shared one fate, revered for their insight, yet feared for the disruption that insight caused. In ancient Sumer, tablets describe the Baru, a diviner trained to read omens that others dismissed as coincidence. These individuals were kept at a distance, living on the outskirts of society, because it was believed that anyone who saw too much walked too close to the gods, and the gods were known to be dangerous. In Tibet, hidden monasteries taught adepts to perceive the subtle energies of mind and world, but such training was reserved for the few deemed psychologically strong enough to withstand the shock of awakening. Even Plato, in his famous allegory of the cave, warned that when someone sees the truth outside the shadows and returns to tell others, he is met not with gratitude, but hostility. Jung stood firmly in this lineage of ancient perceivers. His work revived an old understanding that seeing the unconscious is not a neutral act. It is a threat to the collective illusions that hold society together. When an individual accesses deeper layers of reality, they begin to unravel the myths that groups rely on for stability. Myths about identity, morality, power, and even sanity. Jung recognized that human beings cling to these myths because the alternative, facing the raw, unfiltered psyche, is overwhelming. Throughout history, those who saw beyond the ordinary often found themselves labeled as mad, dangerous, or heretical, not because they were wrong, but because they disrupted the delicate balance of the collective mind. The world prefers comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. But there is another reason this knowledge became hidden. Not everyone is ready. Ancient teachers guarded esoteric wisdom, because insight without preparation can shatter a person. Jung echoed this when he said, "There is no awakening of consciousness without pain. To see the unseen is to step into a territory where few dare to look, and fewer still dare to understand." To understand the danger Jung spoke of, We must first understand what it means to see in the Jungian sense. This is not about visual perception or intuition in the casual, mystical way people use the term. Jung meant something deeper, more unsettling. The ability to perceive the unconscious, not just in yourself, but in the world around you. Seeing, in this sense, is an act of piercing through layers of collective conditioning. Most people navigate life inside a kind of psychological fog. They inherit beliefs, fears, and behaviors without questioning them. They live inside a story written by culture, family, religion, society, and they rarely notice the seams in the script. But the moment you start to see those seams, the moment you sense the deeper machinery running beneath human behavior, something irreversible happens. Jung called this moment enantiodromia, the turning point where unconscious forces begin rising into consciousness. And here is the paradox. While most spiritual teachings romanticize awakening, Jung saw that the first stage is often destabilizing. When the truth first emerges, it doesn't arrive as a gentle revelation. It erupts, like a volcano breaking through rock. Imagine sitting in a dark room filled with hidden objects. Everyone else believes it is empty. They walk confidently, comfortably, because they have never stubbed their foot on anything. But you, through some strange twist of fate, find a single, flickering match. For a moment, the room illuminates. You see shapes, shadows, objects. You see complexity where others see nothing. Then the flame goes out. Now you can never move the same way. Now you question every step. And if you try to describe what you saw, you will notice others looking at you with confusion or suspicion. This is the danger. The moment you see, you step outside the consensus reality. And consensus reality, by its nature, resists being challenged. Jung believed that most psychological suffering comes not from the unconscious itself, but from resisting its messages. When someone begins to see patterns in human behavior, shadow projections, hidden fears, repressed desires, they begin to understand people in a way that can feel threatening. It is like seeing a person's hidden wounds before they've admitted they are bleeding, and people protect their wounds fiercely. This is why Jung warned that the awakening individual often becomes isolated. The deeper you perceive, the less you can participate in the illusions that once felt normal. You begin to sense the anger behind someone's smile, the emptiness behind someone's confidence, the fear behind someone's aggression. You see the masks, and you see the trembling person beneath them. Most people don't want to be seen that clearly, not even by themselves. In this way, seeing becomes both a blessing and a burden, a liberation and a responsibility. It forces you to navigate a world where your perception no longer matches the collective comfort zone. If the first danger of seeing what others don't is isolation, the second is far more subtle and far more powerful. Jung understood that once an individual begins to perceive the unconscious, they step into a realm governed not by logic, but by symbols, archetypes, and primordial forces. These forces are not imaginary. They are psychological realities that influence every thought, emotion, and decision humans make. And when you start to see them clearly, you begin to understand people in ways that even they cannot understand themselves. But here's the paradox. The clearer your vision becomes, the more you must question what you are seeing. Jung warned that the unconscious is a mirror, but a deceptive one. It reflects truth, but it also reflects distortion. It can reveal insights, but it can also lure you into mythic projections, illusions, and ego traps. This is why he insisted that anyone who explores the depths of perception must proceed with humility, not certainty. One of Jung's greatest concerns was what he called inflation, a condition where an individual begins to believe they possess special knowledge that sets them above others. The moment someone thinks they are chosen, enlightened, or uniquely awake, the unconscious seizes that ego and twists it. In ancient traditions, this was known as the madness of the seer, the spiritual sickness that afflicts those who mistake vision for superiority. The truth is this: seeing more does not make you more. It makes you more responsible. Jung noted that the unconscious does not grant gifts freely. It tests the recipient. It confronts you with paradoxes, forcing you to hold opposite truths without collapsing into simplicity. For instance, you may see someone's inner pain, yet know they are not ready to face it. You may recognize a pattern in your own psyche, yet be powerless to break it instantly. You may witness the collective shadow of society, its hatred, fear, and denial, yet feel too small to shift even a fragment of it. This tension is what makes Jung's path so different from the popularized versions of spirituality. He did not teach escape or bliss. He taught confrontation, integration, courage, and this path becomes even more dangerous when you begin asking questions that society has buried for centuries. Why do humans repeat the same destructive patterns? Why do civilizations rise and fall in predictable psychological cycles? Why do people fear their inner world more than any external enemy? Once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them, and once you speak about them, you challenge the foundation of collective identity. This is why visionaries, mystics, and depth psychologists have often been misunderstood or even persecuted. They don't only reveal personal shadows, they reveal collective ones. And the collective defends itself with remarkable force. For Jung, the ultimate danger was not the shadow itself, but the refusal to face it. Because when truth is denied, it always returns in darker, more destructive forms. Seeing what others don't is not just a philosophical concept, it becomes a way of moving through the world. But Jung insisted that insight without grounding can become dangerous, destabilizing, or isolating. So how do you walk the path of deeper perception without losing yourself in the process? How do you anchor vision to embodiment? The first practice is radical self-observation. Jung believed that every insight about others must first be tested inward. When you notice a shadow in someone else, pause and ask, where does this live within me? This prevents projection and protects you from the arrogance of feeling above others. It turns perception into a mirror, not a weapon. The second practice is cultivating inner stillness, moments of silence where the unconscious can speak without distortion. Jung often recommended active imagination, sitting quietly, letting images, feelings, or symbols arise, and interacting with them as if they were characters in a dream. This is not fantasy. It is the language of the psyche. By engaging with these symbolic figures, you integrate the unconscious instead of being overwhelmed by it. The third practice is shadow journaling. Not a diary of events, but a record of reactions. What irritated you today? What frightened you? What did you judge in others? These emotional spikes are gateways to deeper truths. Jung taught that what we resist persists, meaning that every moment of emotional intensity is a breadcrumb, leading to buried material. Following these breadcrumbs consciously prevents the buildup of unconscious tension. The fourth practice is maintaining boundaries. When you see deeply into others, it can be tempting to intervene, advise, or reveal what they cannot yet handle. Jung emphasized restraint. Not every truth is meant to be spoken. Not every insight should be shared. Wisdom is knowing when silence is more compassionate than revelation. Finally, the most important practice, finding your tribe. Seek those who can hold depth without fear, those who are not threatened by your perception. Throughout history, depth seekers survived not by blending into the collective, but by connecting with others who walked a similar path. If you can apply these practices, you won't just see more than others. You'll harness that sight without letting it consume or isolate you. You'll walk with clarity, humility, and grounded power. To see what others don't is to walk a path that is both ancient and endlessly new. It is the journey of the mystic, the oracle, the philosopher, the depth psychologist, and it is also the journey of anyone who dares to look inward with honesty. Carl Jung understood that true vision is not a gift given lightly. It is earned through the courage to confront the shadow, the humility to question your own perceptions, and the strength to live in a world that often prefers comforting illusions over unsettling truths. You've learned that this kind of seeing carries a danger, not because the vision itself is harmful, but because it places you at odds with the collective stories that most people believe without question. When you see beneath the surface, when you recognize motivations, wounds, and archetypal forces, you step outside the shared dream of ordinary life. And the moment you step outside a dream, those still dreaming may see you as a threat. But remember this, vision is not meant to isolate you. It is meant to awaken you. It is the light you carry into the darkness, not to expose others, but to guide yourself. not to elevate you above the collective, but to help you navigate it with clarity. Jung taught that the purpose of seeing is not to escape the world, but to integrate it, to bring the unconscious to consciousness so that life becomes fuller, richer, and more authentic. And the true danger is not in seeing too much, but in refusing to see at all. You now stand at a threshold, a place where deeper understanding meets personal responsibility, a place where your perception can become your power if you use it wisely. So ask yourself, what have you begun to see that others ignore? And what will you do with that awareness? If this exploration awakened something in you, honor it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let others on this path know they are not alone. And if you wish to continue diving into the unseen layers of the human psyche, the ancient mysteries, and the secrets that shape our existence, you know exactly where to find the next doorway. The journey continues.